Welcome to Worlds Collide, a wrestling card podcast for wrestling fans by wrestling fans, featuring Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com.
This is like a stock market.
And Zhan Morning from Wrestling with Cards on YouTube. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, I'm just posing the question. Join them as they navigate the world of wrestling cards, helping you build a bigger and better collection and making some money along the way. What's up, wrestling fans and trading card collectors? Another episode, another week. We made it once again, but we may not make it after this week. We may get into a heated discussion like what you see on hobby Twitter. And this may be the end of the podcast right here. I don't know.
I have your address. I have no problems cashing in Miles, coming over there and throwing some beat down.
That may be the first physical threat that I've ever gotten over wrestling card beef instead of just keyboard warriors. You know,
keyboard warriors. Yeah. Put your money where your mouth is, man.
All right, so here we go. My topic. I actually brought this up, and I just had a lot of experience when talking to people. It came to my mind: do wrestling card collectors have a hoarding problem? And we're going to get all into this. I'll just present my case right off the bat, and then we'll let Tony kind of rebuttal, and we'll go back and forth. There's pros and cons. There's definitely things I'm wrong on, but I just think it's, again, another talking point that this goes into other collecting realms as well. You know, figure collecting, or if you're Pokemon collecting or sports card collecting, whatever it is.
Any collecting,
you're going to run into this problem of, am I a hoarder? Now, what I want to kind of discuss, of course, you don't want to end up on an episode of Hoarders. That's actually not what I'm talking about today. That is a concern.
What?
Because if you have so many cards that you can't walk through your house, that is a problem. It's a fire hazard. I also want to make the point that I think that it can be a financial strain. And what I mean by that is, maybe this is just me, but if I've got a bunch of stuff sitting around and it's not something I'm looking at every day, using every day, something that's important to me, something that is a nostalgic or memento or family heirloom, something like that, I get rid of it. I'd rather have that money into something I do like, or I'd rather have that money in my bank account for when an emergency happens, I can pay for life stuff. So cross cards, life stuff, rather have both of those things than some just random stuff I don't care about sitting around. Now, that being said, that's not really my argument for wrestling card hoarding. I got two main things that I want to talk about as far as the hoarding, as far as the negativity of it. And the first being is that I have this feeling that the more people that hoard cards and don't allow them to come to market and don't talk about them, and they're just like, this is my little niche, this is my thing, I don't want anybody to know about this because I'm going to be the number one guy. I feel like that's a detriment to the hobby overall, because the more you talk about something, people get interested. So if they're interested, they want it. If they can't get it, they lose interest. And I think we're going to start seeing that with a lot of vintage stuff. I think we're going to start seeing that with people who have these cards that are like, I paid this for it, but I don't want to talk about it publicly. I don't want to put it out there, because people see that and they say, okay, that's cool, but if I can't get any of them, how am I supposed to be interested? That's it. I'm moving on to the next WWE Panini release. So that is my initial complaint on hoarding, because people just get all these cards. How many, pick a card. I'll just say 85 Topps Hogan. Do you really need 75 copies of that? I don't, from an investment standpoint, 100% get it. You're going to do really well on that. But
I guess it depends. I mean, what if you're an interior decorator and you want to do your own wall, just Hogan wallpaper? I get it. Okay,
that's another good point. That is a very valid point, actually. Home decor. I've never actually considered that. So
see, think outside the box, sir.
I need to do a better job of that, I guess. Usually I think I'm the one thinking outside the box, but I guess not in this situation. I just think that, the popularity of a specific card, if you like it so much and you drive the interest and you talk about what it means to you, then you would be able to let those go. I want to talk about my cross cards, because people might say, hey, you're being a hypocrite. You are hoarding cross cards, and you're not. But the thing is, if somebody comes to me and they have another cross card I don't have, you better believe I'm going to give them a second copy of Transcendent or an Auto or something like that. Or if they have another card that I actually think would fit a PC better that's not a cross card, absolutely, I'll be willing to trade with it. But there's a lot of people out there who just aren't willing to let go of what they have to then better themselves on the back end. So on that initial complaint, what is your rebuttal?
I don't really think I have one. You pretty made a good.
Oh man, I was expecting you to like have a really hot take that was
Well,
opposing some.
there are people in the hobby that want to collect like that, anyways, and they want to hoard all this stuff because it's an investment for them. I mean, why
Which makes
wouldn't
sense.
if you have a tip for something or you have a hunch for something, especially like we treat it like stock, and I know that I believe in this company and I want to invest in this company. I'm the controlling interest now because I believe in it so damn much. You know, why is that a problem? Why is that a problem where someone wants to go in and say, I need to have X amount of this card, and I'm going to continue to keep buying more and more that I can find, basically kind of cornering that market in a sense. I see your point. I get it. Because if I've now seen what you're posting up there, and I like what you're posting, and now I'm interested, but then I lose my interest because I can't go out and participate in that because you have them all.
Right.
I see that. But then that's also kind of like a little late to the party kind of thing mentality.
Do you think
isn't
that also? Yeah, no, and I understand from a like if you want to look at this like stocks, absolutely that 100% makes sense. I get it, but I think I'm wondering, and I could be wrong here. I'm just putting that flat out there. This is just an opinion that I could be wrong on. You know, I do admit when I'm wrong, unlike some of you out there on Twitter. So my concern may be the value. Like, does it drive the value down because people quit caring about it? Or does it drive it up because it still is in everybody's mind, but they just can't find it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the people who are no longer interested in it probably were in no position to own it to begin with in terms financially. Some people get mesmerized by looking at this $30,000, $40,000 card that I know in my mind I ain't paying that money for that. I can't afford to do
Right.
that. So maybe there's that aspect of it. But there are people out there who are just waiting and waiting and waiting. Wouldn't a good point be with Uncle Danny finally acquiring the Andre autograph
Yes.
card?
Perfect example.
He waited patiently. He knew it was out there. He struck a deal, and they made it happen. And so both parties walked away feeling good about themselves. But I don't think he was deterred by like, I'm never going to have this, so I'm no longer interested in the All-Star stuff. If I can't have it, I don't want any of it kind of thing. I used to be like that kind of guy. I used to like guys like, if I can't have everything from this release, then I don't want any of it. And that's what did get me out of collecting or master set collecting, because when Topps got involved with the multi-levels of parallels, I was like, I'm done. I'm tapping out. I mean, little did I know that parallels became like my thing now. But I get it. But he waited patiently, and he shopped smart, and he went and he got it. And now look at him. I'm sure he's happier for it. But I think it's both sides of people. People who are going to be like disinterested are probably ones who had no interest in paying that kind of money to begin with.
I just wonder if maybe people.
But I also see your point too. I do
Yeah.
see your point. I do see your point. Like, why do you need to have 75 of a certain card?
Well,
Especially if you're not selling.
That's and from a stock perspective, like what you put it, that 100% agree.
Well,
But
even stocks, at some point you have to sell your. What are you investing in your stock if you don't have an end game?
It's true.
And if your end game is sit there to go to your coffin with all your stock options, congratulations, that's great. You have a very expensive coffin. But I hope you can take care of your Microsoft and your Apple stock in the great beyond. But I mean, what are you going to do with? What are you going to do with it? What's your end game? Is it to continuously have bragging rights? Is that what you're looking for? To do bragging rights? The fact that you've made it to this level already, isn't that bragging rights enough? Do you need to hold on to it forever and ever and a half? I get that. By the same token, too, I did the homework, man. I did the legwork. I tapped into something that you didn't think of and nobody else in the market thought of. I was getting cards graded before anybody else. I'm speaking figurative, not me, of course. But it's just you have that mindset of like, I discovered something you didn't discover. I'm going to capitalize off of that. But then the end game becomes my stepping. Where do I go from that point forward? Like, what are you going to do with it now that you have 50 of this, 75 of that, 100? I mean, what are you going to do with it? What if there's a market that wants it? Why are you not letting some of it go to the market to help your overall value?
Yeah,
Because
that's my biggest argument right there.
If I had 50 of them, that's why I agree with you on this side. If I had 50 of them, why wouldn't you want to let go 3, 4, or 5 of them to generate that interest. Like they're out there and they're getting big money, and
100%.
now you're creating a huge value for you. You just grew your portfolio even more now.
Yep.
But at the same time, maybe you have an attachment to that. Like, you know what? I like having all these. It's fun to look at all of them. I don't know. It'd be nice to talk to someone that has all that and says, I have no interest in selling because I just like looking at them, or I like having them in my safe, or I like having them hang on my wall, or I like having them buried in the backyard. I don't know what your thing is. I don't know. Maybe you're building a time capsule for like the year, 3022, and you want someone to go like, Hulk Hogan. I remember that name.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a good reason, a good point, and I guess there's different reasons why people want to do that. But I got no problem with them holding it. I guess I do get tired of seeing it all the time. I can tell you that. Just like I barely even was posting on, especially on Facebook. For me on Facebook, someone complained about every time I was doing a mail day post about Loomis, and they're like, "Why am I seeing so much Loomis stuff on this page?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, because I PC him and I was just sharing my stuff. But don't worry, I won't post it on Facebook anymore." And I stopped. I stopped posting on Facebook.
Yeah, that's why everybody needs to get to Twitter, or everybody
Well,
likes to see all kinds of wrestling cards.
so I just, like, okay, well, maybe I should put this on a more personal play instead of just putting on WTC stuff, because that's what I, post it all on. But I don't know. I mean, the hoarding issue, I mean, fans and collectors, as you know, are just super passionate about what they collect. It's different than any other sports.
I've got one other thing I want to touch on a negative, but I want to piggyback on what you're saying because you're talking about the stocks and stuff. Maybe I'm just wrong, and maybe that's because I'm approaching this from, I want to make money. Yeah, I want to have the self-sufficient PC where everything I get to keep is not out of my work money, so to speak. But maybe I'm the one who is just like, hey, let's try to grow the hobby. Let's talk about our cards. Let's talk about our collections. Let's collect different things. And
but you love your Hogan Precious Metal Gems so much. What if you had 10 of them?
I'd sell a couple of them.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't need 10. I need one.
All right.
Yeah, because the one I have, I've turned down. People like to talk about these offers that are private deals. I legitimately have turned down 5-figure deals for this card, and I will refuse to sell it. Like, I'll sell it one day. I do have an exit, but maybe that's 5 years, 10 years, 20. I don't know, but I just feel like there's enough of us out there with the Hogan PMG. There's a new person every day that's got one, not because it's easy to get, but because people want to be in this quote club, like we're super cool or something. But there's enough of them out there that it's keeping it in people's minds. And amongst all of us, there's probably one or two that would let them go occasionally. I mean, we've seen them, one or two of them come up for auction just this year alone. Then sometimes you don't find that with all of these cards. So I just wanted to get that in there, that maybe I'm the one that's wrong about this because I'm approaching it from a different perspective of like growing a community market as a whole, if that makes sense, as opposed to just trying to capitalize gain for myself.
Yeah, because you treat them just like everything else, though, as far as anything else that you have in the collectible world, whether it be lunch pails or records or cards. Yeah. I mean, but then you have to understand, we're talking about wrestling fans here, too. So as we know that wrestling card collectors, they connect more than with their cards in any other niche, too. So, and I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess it matters, what you're saying is quantity of something. Why do you need to have so many of the same thing? And again, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know why people are like that. I certainly don't have a problem with it per se, but at the same token, I think it's probably, I agree with you in the sense that it does a disservice to the hobby because there's just people who want to collect these now can't because there's just not enough of them out there. It's such a weird thing, though, too.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times, even if you take the dollar amount out of it, like even if you're saying, okay, I'm making this available, but it's $100,000, there may be somebody out there willing to pay that, but the fact that it's not out there, like, you just never know.
Yeah, I mean, 82 Hogan All-Stars is a good example. I mean, there's obviously, the print run of those has been discussed at around 2,000 cards, somewhere around there, sets. There's 2,000 of them out there, so it's not overly super rare comparatively speaking to other things in our hobby that we find and deem rare that are numbered or gold parallels or whatever the case may be. so it's not like it's super rare. It's just the demand's pretty high for that card. So the
52
lot,
mantle. That's what it is.
that's what it is exactly. So I mean, it's arguably the the most important piece of cardboard in our niche, and you know having that many of them, if you're going to have like 50 of them or 100 of them, I don't know. Yeah, if you take percentages out, yeah, it's difficult. And I'm someone getting into the hobby going like, you know what? I'm a Hogan fan. I remember these days. Now I'm getting into it. Like, but I'd love to have that car. I mean, hell, I think Chuckster's in that boat. Chuckster doesn't have an 82 All-Star Hogan. It's just out of his price range. And I get it. But, is he going to lose sleep over someone else having 50 of them? I don't think so.
Well, and even then, like what's something else I want to talk about. This is my last point that I want to talk about on the hoarding. Before I get to that is, say you're somebody like me and you have that work ethic where you're like, I'm just going to grind and level up and keep going and working and working. Half of these cards, it doesn't matter how hard you work, like unless you're a billionaire. And even if you were a billionaire, some of them might not be available, even for $1 billion. Like people just don't let these things go. And it's like, I get it from your perspective of the stocks and everything, but from growing the hobby and growing the general interest of these older cards. And I'm even talking like, if you want to like go back to baseball, like you see this vintage baseball, like people say, well, I never saw them play. I wasn't even born until 50 years after they played. But
Sure.
it's the fact that people still talk about them and they make them available. And they don't just, I mean, there are people out there hoarding, but it's like, the 52 mantle is always in the limelight. And then when these prices come out, there's always that one or two people that say, okay, I'll let mine go for that. Maybe we get to that point, but I just don't want some of the older wrestling cards to become an afterthought because they're just not available, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And then, some of these guys hold on to these pieces anyways, quantity or not quantity. But some of them hold on and, pardon my French, people, but it's nice, it's a nice big dick story. Like it's just basically, look what I got. And it's not, maybe it's one piece or I have 50 pieces. It does feel there is ego involved in this kind of thing too.
Sure.
So ego now becomes like, hey, check me out, man. Look at my stuff, and people give him praise like, oh my god, you have so many cool things, and I get that. There's a level of respect that I have in that as
Sure.
well too, because someone went out of their way to invest. They did their homework and invest on that. And the flip side is still is that now there's less of it out there for new collectors to come in and get involved. And we want the hobby, like you said, to grow. And one of the ways to grow is to take these things and see them flip from one hand to the next hand, kind of thing. I mean, it's not like I'm asking someone to take their one of one card and then have it just keep selling from one hand to the next hand, so like that. But
Or if you had like Danny's signed set, like I wouldn't dare ask him to break that up.
oh yeah, God
You
no,
know.
no. I mean, that's again a lot of work and a lot of money involved. There's like that are there's scarcity right there. But when you have something like the All Stars, which is a big topic right there, I mean, people don't want to let them go, and it's unfortunate in that sense because. But there's just a lot of them out there too. You can go on eBay right now. You can pretty much find almost, I think, anything from those sets. So they're out there. So I guess I don't get what the issue is on that side. Like, well, you've got like so many of them, I can't have any. Like, what? But they're out there, man. They're on eBay all the time.
Yeah, and a lot of it is. I just wonder if we get to a point where they're not. That's
Well, of course.
based
Maybe
off.
not. Maybe
And
not.
I've fully admitted I could be wrong with my train of thinking. I'm just thinking out loud.
Maybe not. I mean, you've accumulated many of even your number one set All Stars that you love so much.
Yeah.
They've come to your hands and they've left your hands for whatever reason that may be, to level up, to square up on a deal, whatever it may be. So it's not like they've sat in you forever. And you're hoarding a whole bunch of stuff yourself.
Nope. I want
but
one
they
copy of each. That's all I need.
Yeah. Yeah, and they go out the door, but others maybe don't find it that way. Like, you know what? I like this. And I want to have more of them.
Okay, and this leads to my next point. We'll just go ahead and get into it. And this is actually a bigger complaint than what we just talked about. So bring in the heat. This is people who are hoarding wrestling cards in general, and you talk to them or you see it on social media. And we talked about this a little bit in the last episode about how they see that card, they wanted that card their whole life, and you say, okay, well, I'd be willing to sell it, but even better yet, I know you've got like an entire house full of cards. I will trade you this card for something that you have. And they're like, oh, I can't let go of my cards. And I'm just like, I've never understood that thought process ever. Like, you've got this thing you want so bad. Now, I understand if you're like, yeah, you don't. I understand the fact of not wanting to let go of your collection because a lot of people like to collect a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things and don't have a narrowed focus. That I get. But when you put on social media and you're like, hey, I'm trying to move this card because there's this other card I want to buy, or I really want this, specific card, whether it's a $5 card or a $50 card, and then you present that to them in a trade or a sell, and you're like, hey, I'll give it to you for 50% plus one card from your collection.
Mm-hmm.
They just like refuse to move anything that's in their collection, even if it's something they haven't looked at in years and isn't part of a set, and maybe it isn't even that rare.
Well, what that tells me in that scenario then is that the item that person can already has and not willing to let go is more important to them than anyways than what they're trying to get.
So why do you think what's the deal then with that? Like, and why do they just clamor over and over again, like how much they want this card, and then you present it to them and they don't want
They're lying to themselves.
it?
They really
Okay,
no, they
you
they
win.
are. They're lying to themselves because if it's something they're clamoring for so much, but they're unwilling to give something up that they have in their collection to make that deal happen, then the stuff that they have in their collection that they're unwilling to let go means more to them than what they're clamoring for.
I think you just said it. I think you just answered my question right there.
I mean, no, really, it's
Yeah.
what it is. I mean, if you have to look at both sides, you go, I have been wanting that card forever. Okay, I'll trade it for this, but I want that. Oh, but I can't let that go. Well, then you obviously want that more than you want this. That's
Yeah.
how it works, man. So, I mean, I guess something like, well, I want them both. Well, now you're just being now you're you're being a hoarder. You want
Welcome to
everything.
wrestling cards.
Yeah. Well, that's everything in life, man. That's just everything in life. I mean, that could
I
be
just
property. That could be anything. I mean, that could be.
I've called out wrestling cards though specifically because I've dealt with people who've had cross cards or had all stars cards or specific wrestling cards I wanted, and they were sports card dealers that somehow they fell into their lap, and they knew what they had. They gave me a fair price. They didn't give me a super discounted price. They gave me a fair price, but they also understand that the leveling up game, and maybe they wanted something I had in my that I was trading to them that was going to end up being a PC item, plus they could make some money on something else.
Sure.
It's that mentality of not necessarily the flipping, but just, hey, if something pops up and it's something I really want, maybe I can let go of some of my other stuff. Again, maybe
Well,
it doesn't.
that's a scenario you're using as a dealer, though, and
Yeah,
a typical dealer's frame of mind is always about leveling up, whether it be for to sell to make more money in the long run, or like you said, a combination of like something to flip and also add to their PC as well if they have such a thing. But again, it always boils down to if something that you have is something that you're unwilling to let go to complete something that you claim you've been looking for forever, then what you have already is more meaningful to you than what you want to get.
yeah. So let's talk about some pros about hoarding. I'm not all about the hate here. Let's talk about some pros. New ways of collecting. There's two things I want to specifically talk about. I started doing it with Cross, and I actually got my inspiration originally from the Top Slam app. We're going all the way back to the early days of that thing. And I initially started with like Brock Lesnar and Asuka when I first got it. It was before like I hadn't started doing content or anything. I was just like, I'm going to super collect these guys, and I want a million base cards. Like every single time I get one of their cards, it's going to be exciting pulling out of the pack, no matter what it was. I started doing that with Cross. That transition to doing that in real life with Cross cards, and I'm having so much fun doing this. I'm like, oh, somebody just donated me a bunch of base cards, or hey, I made a trade with. I traded an autograph card I'll just, I mentioned Booker T a couple episodes ago. I traded a Booker T autograph for like a stack of cross base cards like that. And it's just a new fun way to collect. And I got the idea from Bo Thompson, 1 million Cubs. He's trying to collect 1 million Cubs cards. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what he's doing, is just like hoarding all these, whether it's a super valuable card, whether it's a, penny junk wax air card, he's trying to get them all. And that's kind of what I've started doing with Cross. I know you were doing the same thing with Loomis. So in that definition, in that form, I think hoarding has provided a new way for people to collect.
Sure it has. But at the same token, too, I'm not going to even if I had 50 copies of a certain base card of Loomis like that, but someone else needed one, maybe I controlled the market.
Yeah, you cornered the
Now,
market. Yep.
yeah, I cornered the market of like all the Loomis cards from NXT 2020 or something like that.
Hmm.
And now it's like I've got like thousands of them, and like, I need this to complete my set. I'd be more than happy to let some go to help people out with their collections like that. I
Yep.
don't need to have all of them, but I'm having fun in the process of gathering everything. It's so cool, like you said, when you open a pack, like on Slam, you get somebody you want, or you get a card in a lot you purchased. It's still just as cool to me now as it was. I don't go like, oh, another one of these. I just go, cool, another Loomis card.
Yep. Same.
And so it's just, I have it, but I have quantity that I can maybe even use as leverage to help someone else out and get some other cards I either don't already have or I have very few of.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't know if you've had experience with this lately, but as Loomis and Cross are now on TV again, like maybe somebody starts the collection of his stuff, and then you're able
Mm-hmm.
to help them by, hey, I'm somebody approaches you, hey, I know you're a Loomis collector. I'm looking for some cards. Where can you direct me? And you could be like, well, here's some base cards, and I can just send them to you. Or,
Yeah.
here's an autograph I'll sell to you for $5 because I've got
Yep.
20 of them. Whatever.
Which is also on the flip side what people did to me when they found out I was collecting Loomis, and as well
Right.
with you with Cross. People go like,
Right.
"Hey, I know you're the guy that collects stuff. I have it. I'm just gonna send it to you. Give me your address, man, or give me $5 or something like that." And
Yep.
it's been very helpful. So I'm a big believer in paying it forward. So if that were to happen, and because I have so many of certain ones, like I have multiples of like Prism, red, white, and blues of Loomis. I have multiples of certain ones of Loomis. Like if someone wanted one, I'd be happy to send it over to them too. So because I pay it forward, man.
Right. So I talked about pros and cons of wrestling card collectors being hoarders today. What have I not touched on? What do we need to go back on? What's something that needs to also be said about this?
I think we kind of covered it all, really. I mean, it's just as important to know about wrestling cards, like they are different. We've said this many times. It's different than other sports. There's the nostalgic feeling. There's all of that taking you back where I was a kid. I loved this. I got out of it. Now I'm getting back into it. Not so much the new stuff, but the old stuff. Or I got into the new stuff because of my kid. I have kids now, and whatever the reason may be. So I get that. Now I start, collecting, and I'm a super collector of this person or whatever. It's just the nostalgic aspect of it, also like that. But there's that fine line of like how much is too much, and what can I do to help better my own personal collection, and B, help somebody else out to get them into the hobby as well. So there's got to be some balance there. And I think there's some people who aren't so. They're one way or the other. And then there's a lot of guys like yourself and myself, I think, are in that same group that are like, hey, I have a lot of this. I don't mind sharing some of it with you to help you out and you help me out and that kind of thing. So that's what the hobby is supposed to all be about anyways. I mean, they're called trading cards for a reason.
Yeah, not hoarding cards.
Yes.
Also, though, as we close out here, I think we touched on it a little bit, but I think it's also important for us to put out there. I don't think that I would be honest with myself if I didn't say it. I think there's some people that need to consider this hoarding and consider their financial stability of life in general. Because
Yes.
we've had several people, I know several people who've gone way in debt to buy cards. And I'm not talking about they went in debt to buy like a, high end card. Like they went in debt to buy wax and rip wax.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and then they keep them. Like they don't understand dollar cost averaging. They don't understand cutting, taking a 30% loss on something just to keep the money. But, oh, well, can I sell my select base cards to help pay my electric bill this month, or do I just keep all those and not go without electricity? Like what, like,
Yeah. I mean,
it's just something that needs to be said.
Yeah, you have to balance yourself. I mean, there's always it's like an addiction. We've talked about this,
Yes.
I think, once on the 100th episode I did, and it is very equivalent to being an addiction. So it could be very easy. I know I'm guilty of it. I have memories of taking a then girlfriend who gave me a blank check to go out and buy baseball cards, and I did. And I went out and I bought. She's like, I can't believe you just spent $400 on trading cards like that. Are you going to get rid of them? Are you going to sell them or something? Like, no, I want to keep them. And that's stupidity. You just got to be mindful of that, and don't get yourself in over your head.
Yep. Great discussion today. Pros and cons, and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, maybe Tony's right, maybe he's wrong, maybe we're both right or wrong. Once again, the kind of the origins of this channel and anything else that we're doing is to educate every single time and give different perspectives, differing opinions. We don't want you guys out there just consuming the mainstream. I say mainstream as in like wrestling is the big thing, but you know what I'm talking about. Like the mainstream of hobby wrestling, Twitter content, whatever it is. Like there's a sentiment about around like what everybody is doing is the right thing to do, and that's just not the case. Sometimes you can take from that and apply it to what you do, and that is the right way to do it. And then sometimes we're wrong, sometimes you're wrong as a listener, sometimes the community as a whole and the market is wrong. And you just got to be able to take all of these things, apply it to how you do the hobby, have fun, and be smart about it.
Yeah,
Tony, you got anything else?
This is just two dudes that jump on and talk about wrestling cards. And if there's any nuggets of information that come out of it that you can take, that's great. Ultimately, what I like to hear is I want to hear from people. Like I would like to see comments from people, more comments, like engaging in conversation, whether it be on Twitter or wherever, where we talk about this on a more regular basis. And like we all learn when we talk.
Yes.
We don't have to finger point and name call and all this stuff. We just need to talk about it and like why you believe and what you believe in and what works for you. Because what works for you doesn't work for me, but what works for me doesn't work for Zhan. Let's just have conversation. So these episodes are just to start up some conversation, and through those conversations, hopefully we learn something.
And when you talk about engagement, you guys feel free to tag me anything you want. If you want to call me names and point out something I'm wrong or I'm right about, feel free. Like, you take all the hobby, like people know the hobby. David Peck, Rob England, Adam Gelman, Card Foundation. There's all kinds of other people out there. There are things they say that I'm like, yeah, they're 100% right on this. There's other things they do that I'm like, I disagree with that. But I don't go after them. I may ask them a question about it. But that's the thing is like, I take what they like these guys that may know more than me. I take what they know and apply it to how I do things. Or maybe I'm able to take that information and apply it to somebody that's brand new in the hobby, and it helps them get started with what they're doing. That's what I'm here for and what I'm all about.
Yep. Agreed.
Let everybody know where they can find you.
WrestlingTradingCards.com, sir. 20th anniversary this year. Unbelievable. 20 years of my life. Never getting it back.
And it seems like we just keep doing more and more. Like as the hobby grows, it seems like you're getting busier doing other things. Like
really, I really am. I mean, with personal stuff, open the card, not a card shop, but an actual shop, wrestling Steam store here in Phoenix, Arizona. But more on that will be coming out here soon. But between that, the hobby itself growing with, the dynamics, everything changing with companies buying this company out, and this is going to change, and that's going to change, distribution's going to change, and, Panini's got a license. Oh, we're going to lose that license before we even got the license. And, all these things are changing, and it affects how we do things on WTC, how we archive stuff. So much independent stuff out there trying to contact. And hey, if you're an independent, if you're listening to this and you're an independent trading card producer, you're an independent company that produces cards, please reach out to WTC. Let us know how we can go ahead and get your information put up on our checklist. I've been going out a lot lately over the last several weeks and reaching out to a lot of different independent promotions and companies out there, and graphic designers who produce cards all over the world, and trying to get them to communicate with me checklists and information, and also invite them on as guests to talk about their process, how they got involved in making cards and all that kind of stuff. And there's stuff can be learned from all that information too. But yeah, contact us over on WrestlingTradingCards.com. Check out all of our social media platforms on the bottom of every single page, and reach out. Let's engage, man. Let's talk about wrestling cards.
As well as the YouTube channel. I like to plug that every chance I get. You've had some of these card creators from these independent professional wrestling promotions. You've had them on your channel. So, guys, a lot of times if you're wanting to know a little bit of behind-the-scenes information on print runs or why this card was this and why it wasn't, and blah, blah, blah.
Basically from conception of I have an idea going through the photographer to the talent, from the talent to production, from production to distribution. It's always everybody has somewhat of a similar path, but there's always some sort of side streets that intersect that main highway.
Yep. Yeah, I always love I've got your content on every single time I'm listing cards on eBay, and it's just like it's just amazing information, the stories about what goes into the cards and stuff. Again, stories behind the cards. We always like to talk about that. You can check out all my content, Wrestling with Cards on YouTube. That's my main hub. You can check out the Wrestling with Cards podcast. And
follow that dude, man. You're coming up on 1,000 followers, man. Follow him.
Getting close to those subs. Yeah. Like, you know, when I started the channel, that was like kind of my first baseline goal. Is like, wouldn't it be cool to have 1,000 subscribers to this channel? And we're almost there. So if you haven't subbed yet, please subscribe to that. Check me out on social media at Zhan Morning. Tony mentioned engagement. Again, feel free to tell me you heard this podcast. Let us know what you think about it. You know, if I said something that you disagree with or you would like more information on, feel free to tag me in it. I'll get to it as I can. If you send me DMs, they're open. Again, I'll answer those as I have time. But appreciate you guys listening. If you're a wrestling card hoarder, I guess, you know, keep doing your thing. And if today maybe we changed your mind, then hey, that's cool too. But as long as you're in wrestling cards and having fun, I guess at the end of the day, that's really all that matters.
Yep. You know, and with all that, and before we have, you know, sign off, I just want to tell you guys one important thing.
What is that?
Wrestling cards rule!